What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Well, polling as of late in the state of Florida, since Kamala Harris has emerged as the standard bearer for the Democratic Party, Florida has moved from a state that was safely in Donald Trump's column, because as we all know, this is Trump's home state. Since he became president, it used to be New York. His residence is Mar-a-Lago, which is in Florida. But since Kamala Harris has replaced Joe Biden as the nominee, Trump's lead in Florida has evaporated to the point where in the most recent polling there, he had a 2-point lead, which is within the polling margin of error. So the Kamala Harris campaign, noticing this trend, has now opened up offices, campaign offices in Florida, meaning that they are going to seriously contest Florida. They're not going to concede it to Trump. Now, why this is notable, I'm not saying that she's going to win the state of Florida. For those of you who don't comprehend very well, what I am saying is that she's going to put Trump on the defensive. It's a mirror image of what happened in 2016. Remember in 2016, many people, many so-called experts, many so-called political pundits who knew what they were talking about, said that Trump was wasting time campaigning in Michigan, campaigning in Wisconsin, campaigning in Pennsylvania. This was the impenetrable blue wall. He wasn't going to win any of those states. His name, his party was anathema to those voters. But it paid off for him as he narrowly won all 3 states and captured the presidency. He put Hillary on the defensive. Hillary, not one damn time, if I'm not mistaken, for the last month, did she spend any time in Wisconsin or Michigan, if I'm not mistaken? Remember, she got on a stage in October, if I remember correctly, 8 years ago, with LeBron James and was contesting Ohio, which ultimately went to Trump by a much larger than expected margin. But this time, because of the massive amount of money that the Kamala Harris campaign has, they feel that they can contest Florida. Now, Florida has 30 electoral votes. If Trump doesn't win Florida, he's not going to win. That's ball game. Texas, the thing about Texas is, I think I did a video sometime in August I think it might have been late August when I did a video saying that maybe Kamala could carry Texas, but I still think that the demographic changes and the cultural changes aren't happening fast enough. I don't think Kamala's going to carry Texas, but I do think that the days of national Republicans winning Texas by 15 to 20 points are over. I think Trump's going to get a narrow victory. If I had to guess, I'd say he's going to carry Texas by about 4 points. But eventually, maybe 2028, definitely by 2032, Texas is going to be a swing state. And Republicans need to worry about that because that's 40 electoral votes on the table. And if they lose Texas's 40, they're not going to win any presidential elections. But getting back to this, this would possibly, definitely going to put Trump on the defensive. I've also read that from this moment forward until Election Day, Trump is going to be campaigning every single day. So all the days of him golfing on his Mar-a-Lago property, around his Mar-a-Lago property, and not really being on the stump, those days are done. He has to really campaign hard to win this election because he's going up against a lot. You know, he's going up against the Harris machine, and they are a machine right now. They got a lot of fucking money. We all know there's a liberal media bias, and he has to really focus on getting out his troops on election day because that's going to be what's going to get him elected. Another thing that I've been reading about is that Republicans are very concerned about the ground game for the Trump campaign, meaning that just going around giving a bunch of speeches and rallies, that's important. But the organization of the campaign, the national organization, or if not necessarily the national organization, but the organization in these states that they're focusing on, the swing states. Plus, I would even say Florida at this point in time, you know, Texas, although I think that's fading for Harris, but we'll have to wait and see. Hell, even Virginia, if they put enough resources in, maybe they could put that in play. Just to drain some of the resources from Kamala Harris and have her compete more in Florida, and in Virginia. But the Trump campaign isn't doing that. So this is the thing. So I'm reading that Harris campaign is opening offices in Miami, Jacksonville, Naples, and Pensacola. They had a month to do this. They should have done this earlier, to be honest with you, because I never figured out why they didn't think that Florida was at least attainable. So by Kamala Harris trying to expand the map is very, very intelligent. Just reading some stuff right here. So Florida has an interesting history. Florida, for a long time, from the end of the 19th century into the 1950s, was a reliably Democratic state, part of the old Solid South. But it did go for Eisenhower in the 50s by landslides. Eisenhower was Republican, but he was a middle of the road, moderate Republican who kept in play many popular New Deal policies. In the 1960s, Florida was basically a swing state, but still on the state and local level voted heavily Democratic. Nixon won it in 60. Johnson won it narrowly in 1964 in his national landslide. Nixon won it again in 1968, though Wallace did very well in the state. Starting in the 1970s, Florida was transitioning to being a Republican state, although Jimmy Carter won it in 1976. In the 80s, it went to Reagan twice and then Bush and landslides. I'm talking about on a national level. In the 1992 election, Bush retained it narrowly over Clinton and Perot, but Clinton captured it in 1996. And starting in the 2000s, of course, with the infamous 2000 election, which Bush beat Gore by just 537 votes out of like 6 million cast. It was the closest state race in presidential election history. So for the 2000s, Florida was a swing state. Obama won it twice. But since 2016, Florida has been in Trump's column both times. Even when Democrats thought they had a shot at it with Biden in 2020, it still went to Trump by a larger than expected margin. So is this real? If I had to take a guess, Trump is probably still going to win Florida. But I don't know. Like, this election is really, it's hard to pin down this election. Look, if this was Joe Biden, I told you from the get-go, if Joe Biden was still in this race, they would have lost. There was no doubt in my mind Joe Biden would have lost. But with Kamala entering the fray, the whole electorate is shifted. Allegiances have shifted. So I don't know exactly how this election is going to play out. But I will say this. I'm going to say this. And you got to remember, this is just polling, so you can't really trust this all the way. But I am seeing evidence that black people are reconsolidating under the Democrats. Remember all the polling that showed Biden only getting 65, 70% of the black vote. Trump was getting 25%. Although Trump is still doing better than most Republicans in recent memory since the 1980s. This polling had Kamala at 87% support with black voters. That's getting close to what Biden and Hillary got in their elections. So that means that despite all the fucking complaining about the Democratic Party, all the warnings we've given about the Democratic Party, it's looking like they're going back to Kamala and the Democrats. And I said this before. All the complaints that we have about certain things in our culture, you must want it, because you don't have to vote for either one of these candidates. There are 15 others, the third-party candidates running nationally. 15 other nationally, depending on what state you live in. Not all of them on every state and every ballot. But you got other options. Hell, you can vote for yourself. But people just want to be on a winning team. You know, people have been brainwashed by the two-party system. But I'm not going to give any election predictions. It's way too early for that with this race. It's just too early. But we're within a month now of Election Day. I'm just going to say this. I still think this is going to be a close election, but I think the last 2 weeks of this campaign is going to decide it. Definitely the last week. The last week to 2 weeks are going to decide this campaign. So Trump is hitting the stump hard. J.D. Vance had a strong performance at the VP debate. Kamala Harris has her ground game. Kamala Harris has an immense war chest like we've never seen before. Barack Obama, even though I don't think that he really makes much of a difference anymore, but Barack Obama is going to be campaigning for her hard. You got all these so-called celebrity endorsements in play for her. This is going to be a hell of an election. I'm going to tell you another thing, too, guys, in this video. Turnout is going to be unbelievable in this election. Unbelievable, in my opinion. In 2008, well, just give you a perception of how much more invested people are in elections now. In 1996, something like 50%, 51% of eligible voters came out. So 96 million people voted in that election. In 2000, 105 million people voted in that election. In 2004, 122 million people voted in that election. In 2008, 131 million. In 2012, it dropped a little bit to 129 million. In 2016, 36 million people voted in that election. In 2020, 158 million people voted. I wouldn't be surprised that in this election, 170 to 175 million people vote. So just want to put that out there. Tell me what you guys think.